family erased, their bodies missing for decades, their story buried in Wyoming dust. Gerald and Alice Uden, parents, lovers, killers. In this house, love and death slept in the same bed.
What kind of grandparents bury their secrets in a mine shaft and sink their family in a mountain lake? For more than 3 decades, Gerald and Alice Uden looked like any ordinary couple growing old together in Missouri. They blended in so well that no one suspected the truth. He had slaughtered his ex-wife and 2 young sons, while she had executed her husband and dropped him down a Wyoming mine. Behind their quiet smiles and retirement routines lay one of the most chilling family annihilation cases in American history. A crime that stayed hidden for 30 years, until a mine shaft gave up its bones and a lake still kept its dead. A Wyoming enigma, unearthed after decades. In the rolling uplands of Wyoming, a grim mystery lay buried for more than 30 years. The disappearance of a mother and her 2 young sons. In 1980, Virginia Uden, aged 32, and her sons, Richard, age 11, and Reagan, age 9, vanished from Fremont County. The trio had headed out to meet Virginia's ex-husband, Gerald Uden, for what was described as a routine bird hunting outing. This outing would become the last time they were seen alive, and for years, little remained beyond the sharp void their absence created. The investigation stalled. No bodies were recovered, and the only tangible trace was the family's battered station wagon. Found weeks later abandoned near Dixon Park Road and Trout Creek Canyon with blood inside, and hints of a violent struggle. Yet with no suspects in hand and no confession forthcoming, the case remained cold, and the grieving family was left with almost nothing but memories and unanswered questions. When the past caught up. For more than 3 decades, the Uden case lingered in law enforcement files, uncertain, unresolved. Meanwhile, in another part of the state, another disappearance had gone unsolved. In the mid-1970s, Ronald Holtz, one of the husbands of Gerald's later wife, Alice Uden, had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Over time, the 2 disappearances seemed to exist in parallel: cold files, unsolved puzzles, and a frustrating absence of closure. That changed in August 2013, when investigators excavating an abandoned mine shaft in Laramie County, Wyoming, uncovered skeletal remains approximately 40 feet below the surface. Among the bones, they found a skull with a bullet lodged in it, a .22 caliber round, which became a signature clue not only in the Holtz disappearance, but ultimately in the broader web of criminality the Udens had entangled themselves within. The remains were identified as those of Ronald Holtz, and prosecutors believed the killer had shot him while he slept, then lowered him into the mine shaft. This macabre discovery reignited a dormant murder investigation, and it provided the spark that finally broke open a 30-year cold case. Confession behind bars. Once Alice Uden was arrested, on September 26, 2013, law enforcement attention turned quickly toward her husband, Gerald, who was residing in Missouri at the time. Investigators confronted him with Alice's alleged confession and the discovery of Holtz's remains. Under pressure, Gerald claimed responsibility for the disappearance of Virginia and her sons. He described driving them in his car toward Pavilion, then abruptly shooting them using the same .22 caliber weapon the boys had brought for hunting. His chillingly candid explanation painted a picture of cold calculation. He claimed to have lured them on a hunting trip, ambushed them, and then concealed their bodies to avoid the financial obligation of child support payments. According to Gerald, he packed their bodies into metal barrels and submerged them in the depths of Fremont Lake. With depths reaching around 600 feet, the lake is notoriously difficult to search. And indeed, despite efforts to locate any remains, the barrels have never surfaced. The man who destroyed their futures. The state of Wyoming moved swiftly once Gerald's confession came to light. On November 1st, 2013, Gerald Uden entered guilty pleas on 3 counts of first-degree murder, carrying a life sentence for each. At 83, he remains incarcerated at the Wyoming Medium Correctional Institution in Torrington, with no eligibility for parole and no projected release date. His appeals, first in 2020 and then another in 2023, were both denied by the Wyoming Supreme Court, firmly upholding the terms of his conviction and sentencing. Alice Uden's end. Meanwhile, Alice Uden's case proceeded to trial. Prosecutors characterized her actions as murder. They argued that Alice shot Holtz to protect herself and her daughter, then concealed his body in a mine shaft. Alice, however, maintained that she had acted in self-defense. The jury did not accept her account, convicting her of second-degree murder. In August 2014, she was sentenced to life in prison. She died years later in custody on June 12, 2019, at a Nebraska hospital after being transferred from the Women's Medical Unit in Torrington. Her death brought a definitive conclusion to her part in the case, though it left lingering questions for the families of the victims and the investigators who had worked the case for decades. The silence of Floyd's Falls and the echo of small lies. A tension within this saga is how everyday normalcy masked profound malice. For decades, Gerald and Alice Uden lived in Missouri as though they were ordinary retirees. Neighbors saw an elderly couple, not the man who had murdered 3 members of his own family, and not the woman who had hidden a husband's corpse in a mine. The nature of the crimes, deep water, vertical shafts, rural isolation, drank away evidence. Without a body, homicide cases often stall. The abandoned mine and the deep lake are the perfect repositories for silence. What ultimately cracked this weird equilibrium was coincidence. The discovery of one missing person's body, Holtz, led to the collapse of the entire story's carefully constructed lattices of denial. Alice's arrest led to Gerald's confession, and Gerald's confession led to convictions. In just a few short weeks in 2013, decades of coldness turned to fired lines of investigation. Motives that read like calculations. Gerald's motive to avoid child support reads not like a classic crime of passion, but like a transaction gone monstrously wrong. Society often dismisses that level of detachment as garden-variety cynicism. Yet it stands out for how utterly banal and, when amplified into violence, how frightening it becomes. What's truly horrifying is how easily someone can escalate irritation into annihilation when the ethical line seems invisible. Alice's situation presents a different shade. Her claim, shooting Holtz to protect her child, was not accepted by the jury or the courts. That suggests that while self-defense remained her stated rationale, the court concluded it was either premeditated or unjustified under the circumstances. Together, their actions reflect a shared through-line of self-preservation, taken to lethal lengths. The continuing mystery beneath the lake. Even now, in 2025, the deepest wound of the case remains unresolved. Virginia, Richard, and Reagan Uden remain missing and unrecovered. The dark depths of Fremont Lake have yielded no definitive trace of them, and may never. It's a cruel twist of fate that the vessel meant to carry them on a hunting trip became the instrument of their final journey. The silence of the lake is a void that no forensic sonography has yet pierced. But as long as the archives remain open, and communities remain aware, the search is not over. It's the kind of closure only waiting can bring, and waiting has already spanned more than 4 decades. A reflection on secrets and time. The Uden case is not just a tale of imprisonment and vanished victims, it's a study in how secrets persist. Without an obvious crime scene or forensic detonator, a crime can slip between the cracks. The disappearance of a family, the unknown fate of children, colder memories waiting for warmer truths, all reminds us that evil sometimes unfolds not in a flash, but in the blank spaces of long intervals and unremarked corners. And when those spaces finally fill in, it's rarely with cinematic spectacle. It's with quiet evidence and the confession of ordinary people who chose to remain ordinary until they couldn't. What still matters? Today, Gerald Uden remains in prison. Alice Uden is dead. Holtz is identified in that mine shaft. Virginia and her 2 boys remain missing. But this is not only a story of endings. Legal closure does not equal human closure. Families are built from memory and mourning. The mine shaft stands as a rough memorial, Fremont Lake, a silent testament to absence. The case reminds us, sometimes crimes are made of geography, and sometimes one small breakthrough, an anonymous tip, a found bone, can upend decades of disbelief. And that's the chilling story of Gerald and Alice Uden. If you found this case as haunting and unbelievable, as I did, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to the channel. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Their victims remain shadows, their graves unmarked, but time betrayed them. Secrets wrought louder than bones, and the Uden name is now written in blood.